Relatives and friends, as we begin our services, we ask that you please turn off all cell phones or electronic devices or place them in a silent mode.
To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to pluck up that which has been planted, a time to kill, and a time to heal, a time to break down, and a time to build up, a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn, and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones, and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace, a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek, a time to lose, a time to keep, and a time to cast away, a time to rend, and a time to sow, a time to keep silence, and a time to speak, a time of love, a time of hate, a time of war, a time of peace. Ecclesiastes, Kohelet. Hello and welcome today. I'm Rabbi David Goodman. It's my honor to be asked to help lead this funeral service. Perfect voice for occasion like this. Thank you everyone who has come out today to honor the memory of Richard Simon-Bierenbaum. As if anyone who ever met Richard could possibly forget him. In the face of a life sharply reshaped by health challenges, and in the face of a terminal medical diagnosis, Richard was always Richard, a funny guy, a joker, a music lover, an upbeat guy in the face of a downbeat fate. Gail, I met you and Richard about 3 years ago at Nafshenu, the congregation that I lead in South Jersey. I've learned a lot about Richard in the past 10 months since his diagnosis. And there are others who know him so much better, including you, his siblings, his children, among others, that I'm leaving the eulogies to them. But I do want to say a few words to try to frame Richard's life as I understand it. He was born and grew up in North Jersey. By the way, any mistakes in bibliography here or history, please shout them out. His dad was a delivery man, his mother a school teacher. He graduated from Verona High School, class of 71? 71, okay. Hillbillies, okay. And Rutgers, and then headed to Chicago to earn his doctorate in chemistry at not just any chemistry, organic chemistry at Northwestern, Evanston, Illinois, to be precise. And in Chicago, he met you, Gail. You two fell quickly in love, married, and have 2 children. And Gail, you told me that Richard wasn't like other scientists or a particular scientist that you knew. He had a life outside of the lab. He loved music and humor and having fun, and even learned to love performance dance, your passion. His career as a chemist was cut short in midlife when he sustained a closed head injury, and he went on to teach high school chemistry, but had to leave that work behind as well for health reasons. And in the last 7 years of his working life, up until his diagnosis, he took what would be perhaps an entry-level job with Amazon as a way to keep the lights on and the bills paid. He took the hand that was dealt him and played it with determination, with a smile in his heart and a joke on his lips. Last night, after Jason and I joined in the Tahara process, washing and preparing Richard's body for burial, Glynis and I and Jason sat in the afterwards and read some Psalms. Then we turned to another holy book that would have been close to Richard's heart, a collection of jokes by George Carlin. Those were his proverbs, his Psalms. Richard, there are lots of people who pile up material wealth in their lives, but it can't save them from the fate that all people share. What can save us is caring for those around us and spreading love in the world. That love never ends. As the book of Proverbs says, Utstaka tatsil mimavet. Doing the right thing rescues us from death. And now selections from Psalms. Almighty One, what are human beings that you take note of them? The children of humanity, that you should think of them. A human being is like a momentary breeze. A person's days are but a passing shadow. At dawn, life blossoms and renews itself. At dusk, it withers and dries up. You return a person unto dust. You say, return, O children of humanity. So I'd like to now, if I could, invite Richard's brother and sister, Susan and Howard, to come up and say some words about their brother. Please, why don't you come up? Yeah, that's a good question. I would say come up together, then if you can correct each other, but you can also be there in support. Good. What turnabout is fair play.
I'm going to save the longer speech for my brother, who's better with words than I am, but I need to let everyone know how much I love my brother, Richard. I'm lucky to say that he was my older brother, as he's one of the kindest, smartest, and funniest people I know, not to mention what an amazing father he was, who raised two really exceptional, devoted children who loved him as much as they loved him. When it comes to having been a special brother and a model father, Richard did it. As Richard is only 20 months older than me, we grew up close and spent a lot of time together as kids. We were very different. For example, he always loved science and I had no interest in it. I preferred history. We always enjoyed our Sunday outings with our family, aunt, uncle, and cousins. We crowded into a station wagon without seatbelts, and went on a different adventure each week. He went off to Rutgers in New Jersey, where every pre-med student in his organic chemistry class wanted to be his friend, and then completed his education at Northwestern in Illinois, where he earned his PhD in organic chemistry. Fast forwarding to July 2023, we received the devastating news that Richard had terminal brain cancer, and his kids, my oldest brother Howard and I, became very close in our quest to make his final months of life as comfortable as possible. During this time, I saw firsthand what an amazing father he was, and as a result, how devoted Rachel and Jason were to him. They enjoyed every minute they spent with him, took care of his every need willingly, patiently, and with the deepest love. I feel fortunate that I was able to spend time with Richard and see the comfort that his children and family brought to him. It was not until the last week that he was in pain, and I'm grateful he did not suffer for too long and that he's now resting in peace, knowing how much his family loved him and the amazing kids he raised. They will sorely miss him, and I will too. Richard, I love you.
So Richard had no control over this, but I was born 5 years before him. And those of you who know me, I didn't suffer his presence agreeably. No, I love my brother, but he was younger, and he and Susan were more buddies, and I was older and we had different friends groups. But one of the things about a phone is if you want to read your notes, you have to go to the right page. Oh. Here we go. But what I want to talk to you about is what I've learned from my little brother over his lifetime and our time together. He was always just a cute kid and a smart kid and a funny kid and a sweet kid. And I kind of appreciated his growth from a 5-year difference, and his growth as a soccer player and a runner and a chemist, and his musical interests, and his important relationships as he was growing up, and his marriage and his career and his kids, and that was all a source of pleasure and appreciation as he grew. And always, he seemed quiet, kind of understated, but quirky and funny and wicked smart, and so devoted to his family. And as the rabbi mentioned, he had some medical challenges that kind of altered his midlife course, and made it harder for him to work and harder for him to do the things he needed to do. And he struggled with it and did the best he could. So a little less than a year ago, we discovered that he had a cancer. And for me, and maybe for Richard, I don't know, I made many trips during this year to be with him and to be with his family. And to me, this illness brought life into focus for him in a good way. It seemed like for him, his work demands sort of melted away, and everyone who met him was just so touched and appreciative of his kindness, his gentleness, his humor, his intelligence, and he really that came through so clearly and so well, despite the challenges of his illness. And in the process, his kids just surrounded him with love, and he returned that kind of love. And I got to appreciate during my multiple visits to Voorhees, to South Jersey, how engaged he was, how present he was, despite his illness, as a father, as a brother, as a friend. And I can't remember a time that he complained or seemed terribly grumpy about what he had to contend with. He was present, and he was present every day. And so I learned something from him, just being with him and seeing the way that he approached his life during this time, and how his connection with people was so present and so much a part of who he was deeply in his soul, and how much it became a part of what we got to enjoy in a deeper way during that year. As fate would have it, I wound up in the hospital two weeks ago I got my ass kicked by COVID and rhabdo and other stuff, and so I got to spend 5 days in a hospital bed, and I did think about Richard, and of course my challenges were small compared to him, but just the sense of having your life altered in that dramatic way, and I was humbled really. As I was lying in my hospital bed at his grace and his engagement in his life during this time. So what came to me as I was thinking about Richard was a poem, Honest Truth, that I learned for my 6th grade graduation, which was 60-some years ago. And the poem it was by Rudyard Kipling, and some of you may know it. It's called If, and I can still recite some of it. But the last stanza goes something like this. This is what I learned. This is what I learned from Richard, my little brother. If you can fill each unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the world and everything that's in it. And which is more, you'll be a man, my son. Thank you, little brother. You're a fine man, and you are my hero. I love you. You want to have the last word? Go ahead.
No, you can have the last word.
Did I do a good job?
You did a great job. Thank you.
I always say he was a hard act to follow.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, I'd now like to invite Aaron Stevens up to for the recitation of Psalm 23. And then we will hear from Jason and Rachel. Hold it or read it down there, whatever is best for you. We'll do.
Mizmor leDavid, Adonai, role asher, ben ochdesh, yar ben etzini, all menuchot, yenal halelini, nafshi yeshovev, yancheni, vemal geli, itzedek, leman shemo. Gam ki elech bege tzalmevet lo irara ki ata imadi shivtecha umeshimnatecha chema inach mimuni tiaroch leafani shulan negid Sorere Tishanta Vashem Roshiko Seriveya Achto Vechesed Yerdefuni Kol Yeme Chaye Veshavti Bevet Adonai Leroch Yamim. The Eternal is my shepherd. I shall never be in need. Amid the choices grasses does God set me down. God leads me by the calmest waters and restores my soul. God takes me along paths of righteousness in keeping with the honor of God's name. Even should I wander in a valley of the darkest shadows, I will fear no evil. You are with me, God. Your power and support are there to comfort me. You set me in front of a table in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup is overflowing. Surely good and loving kindness will pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall come to dwell inside the house of the Eternal for a length of days.
So, thank you, Aaron. I'd now like to invite Jason and Rachel to say some words about their dad.
So my brother just very graciously said that I need him to finish my speech. He's happy to because he loves the sound of his own voice. I know this to be true. Okay. Whatever, whatever. That's my dad's catchphrase. Whatever, whatever. It embodies him in so many ways, not because he used it dismissively. It's just him. Dad was easygoing, easy to get along with, fun to be around, and quick to make you smile and laugh when you actually got to hear him speak. Eager to please, he just goes with the flow. Whatever, whatever. He rolled through the punches life dealt him, and his mantra remained, whatever, whatever. He had the same non-judgmental approach with people. You want to believe in that? Whatever. You identify as that? Whatever. You want to talk to me like that? Whatever. You want to be that when you grow up? Whatever, whatever. He didn't have a mean bone in his body. Whatever, whatever. It's even what he said to me when I asked him what he would prefer if he ever died. Cremation, burial, shot to the moon. Whatever, whatever. I won't be there, so why would I care? I've been a daddy's girl since day one. I don't have the words to convey how much I love him and how much he means to me, but I'll try to give you a glimpse. To me, my dad has always been a giant, despite his 5'5" stature. He was my hero, my protector, my source of unconditional love. Kind, gentle, and patient in the way that mattered. He taught me true compassion and empathy. He was the peacekeeper, my favorite. Other than Jord, as he always said. Yes, Dad, my favorite other than Jord. Different else. When I was little, I used to get so excited about career day at school. Other parents talked about boring things like selling cars or suing people. My dad inspired me with mad science, like the magic of dry ice, inflating a medical glove until it exploded, or managing to not freeze his tongue to the point where it could be shattered when putting dry ice in his mouth and blowing smoke rings. Don't try this at home, kids. Well, of course I wanted to do it at home. I spent hours playing in the bathtub, happily making solutions and potions, mixing bath water, scope mouthwash, and bubble bath back and forth in little bottles. I wanted to do all the magic stuff Daddy did. I loved Bring Your Daughter to Work Day, seeing the labs, the real solutions and potions, and all the cool things I didn't understand. I wanted to play with beakers and Bunsen burners, make my own potions, dip my hands right in the chemicals. I was always inspired by his brilliance, and I wanted to be just like him. I grew up going to folk festivals, and music was a huge part of our life. Music connected us, and Dad imparted his eclectic musical taste to me. One of my favorites was listening to "They're Coming to Take Me Away, haha, they're coming to take me away, ho ho hee, haha," over and over with him as a child, dancing and singing. My dad's dancing skills consisted of a weird little flapping hand while doing a little hop, and his singing wasn't much better, but I absolutely adored dancing and singing with him. I was just so comfortable with Dad, happy. We didn't have to talk nonstop. We could just sit comfortably in each other's presence, but we could also just laugh. When I went to boarding school, my dad would drive me 2 hours there and 2 hours back almost every week. I cherished those car rides, just getting to spend time together, hanging out with my daddy-o. We joke around, mainly sing along to music. Queen was our mainstay on road trips, belting along with fat-bottom girls, but there were so many others. I used to love his 45 records when I was little and would often attempt to play them, but I mainly just scratched them. So he made me a mixtape of all the moldy oldies, and we would just sing along to Love Potion Number 9, Lua Lua, and In His Convertible, while actually riding in an old rusty minivan. I played that tape incessantly, and I wish I still had it. He broadened my tastes, like the two of us going to see Afro-Celt Sound System, how he made me fall in love with Tori Amos despite myself. When I moved to the Netherlands, long before all of this started, every time I would listen to the song Winter by Tori Amos, I would cry because I missed him. And I don't think that's ever going to stop. He saw so many of my favorite artists back in the day. I'm still jealous. His tastes were eclectic, from show tunes, classical to indie, folk, and Motown. For his 70th birthday, we put together a dad playlist and often played it for him. I just realized, actually, I did put together a slightly curated version for you guys to hear as you came in earlier, but my mind was elsewhere and you didn't get to listen to it. He once said, "You have really eclectic taste in music." Yep, Dad, that's because you do. Another time he said about the Spotify playlist, "I made the CD mix for you, right?" Well, in a way, yes, you did. Dad had a wicked sense of humor. Throughout this ordeal, he still loved making people laugh and smile. Didn't matter what the situation was, and it came easily. He made doctors, nurses, staff, and family and friends laugh in some of the most difficult times. On the day I found out his diagnosis, Dad lost consciousness for hours and was completely unresponsive, and I thought we might lose him. Then there were magical stroopwafels, and he finally came to. I was beyond overjoyed. I said, "Daddy, do you know how hard we've been trying to get you up?" His response, seeing my panic, "If you wanted to get me up, you should have given me a Viagra." As long as his sense of humor was still intact, things were going to be okay. He was still able to teach me so many things, even this last year, that I'm stronger than I ever imagined, and that I'm fiercer than I ever thought I could be when it comes to someone I love. I have so much gratitude for Dad as a whole, as my favorite person, the kindness shown, the support shown. It tears me apart that Dad won't get to see more of Jay and my milestones, see Jay's kids, or see the life my husband and I built for ourselves. He won't have the opportunity to enjoy how our lives grow and evolve in the future. But I am so incredibly grateful for all the extra time we were able to have with Dad this year. I'm grateful to have been able to actually be there for him, to care for him. All of the new memories we were given the chance to make, his absurd jokes, the time that we were just able to share together. I'm grateful that in this last year, Dad had the opportunity to be allowed to speak, be hilarious, be loving, kind, and have the space to let other people experience and enjoy what a marvelous Michigana he is. Dad had the opportunity to see both Jay and I marry our partners. He was able to experience that we both deeply love and are loved, are supported, and are joyful with whom we are lucky enough to have found. I believe this gave him peace knowing that even without him here, for whatever milestones, bumps of the road, or journeys to come, we'd be okay. He helped shape us into who we are, and we will be able to get through whatever. Dad was never used to being the center of attention, middle child. He would be shocked but happy to know I have so much to say about him, the lessons he taught, the laughter and the love, that I really could go on for weeks. He'd probably say, "You're crazy, whatever," then happily grin and listen. I slept over frequently at the assisted living, especially towards the end. We would rotate to make sure Dad always had company, was as comfortable as he could be, and always felt the love. In his last days, he barely spoke, and when he did, the aphasia made it too difficult to understand him, or they simply weren't words. It was really painful knowing he could understand everything being said, but was unable to speak aloud what he was thinking or feeling. One morning, I woke up to two of the aides who adored Dad, getting him ready for the day. One gave Dad little kisses on his forehead while waking him up. Just seeing how much the people at VSL loved and cared for Dad made me happy. The other was trying to get a response from him. He said, she said, "Hey, Richard, hey, sweetie." And then she pointed at me and said, "Who's that?" After 2 days of him being essentially nonverbal, he said, clear as day, "That's my daughter." That's the last thing I heard my dad say. Weird, painful. Those words mean everything to me. I am his daughter. I've been a daddy's girl since I came into this world and will be to my last breath. Dad, you might say whatever to all this attention, but I know you'd smile. I want to honor you, be myself, acknowledge my strength, and make you proud. I will remember all the quiet lessons you taught me. Remember to laugh at all the silly things, care for others, and keep an emergency stash of stroopwafels. This way, although I will miss you forever and I will love you the rest of my life, I'll feel you with me every day. Jerk.
The aside was me telling her that for the first time since before my bar mitzvah, I might be shorter than her. Yeah, thank you, Rachel. This Meshuggah, this marvelous, marvelous Meshuggah. During times like this, it is important to remember the teachings of the old Jewish sage who begged the question, what type of train does a ballerina take? The answer, the sage teaches us, a tutu train. The sage I am talking about, of course, is my father. This was one of his favorite jokes that, if you were lucky, you would hear him tell you 3,000 or 4,000 times a day. If I could save his laughter in a jar, I would never need another light bulb. In a favorite moment of this past year, I'm helping him go to the bathroom, paying him back for some of what he did for me, and as I'm helping clean his little tuchus, he burps in my face. When I told him what happened, his smile grew 10 times its size, and all his wrinkles beamed. If you look through the slideshow, at least one of those photos is after he burped in my face. In his final year, his short-term memory was so fakakta, he couldn't remember what he had for lunch. But he remembered laughing with his kids and his kids-in-laws, and he remembered that burp. I am here to tell you about our dad, Richard Elliot Simon-Bierenbaum, lover of bad jokes, wearer of schmutz, in his word, maker of drugs. And the attribute he would be most proud of, one hell of a dad. During a eulogy, it is customary to list the accomplishments of a person. For Dad, I surely could. He got a PhD in organic chemistry, the subject that makes pre-meds become non-meds. He discovered, was it over 400 compounds?
Yes.
Yes, fact-checked. He ran a marathon, though, as he lamented when telling this to Glynis and me, "It took me 4 hours, for God's sake." Most inspiring to me, he showed me what it means, what to get back up when things don't go according to plan. When I was in 5th grade, his company merged and laid off everyone over 40 in his department. He was diagnosed with a traumatic brain injury later that year. When he accepted the industry he loved would no longer love him back, he made that mid-career transition you heard about earlier today to working as a chemistry teacher, showing up every darn day for students who went to schools lesser men would be afraid of. To paraphrase the famous words of the late 20th century British poets Chumbawamba, he got knocked down, but he got up again. Never gonna keep him down. This was very much the truth of his final year, as he kept surviving past different prognoses, bouncing back from UTIs and pneumonia and a stroke, just to have one more bad joke, one more game of Scrabble, one more cup of coffee. In fact, actually speaking of that stroke, when it happened and I bolted with Glynis to go see Dad in the hospital, be there for him, I at first was very worried I would never get another word out from him. But I noticed that his eyes were following me, so I'm like, all right, Dad, if you can hear me, blink once. And then did simple yes or no questions. And then I said, Dad, let's play a game. I spy with my little eye something that starts with D. And he's looking at me. I'm like, all right, if you think it's Dad, blink twice. And he blinks 7 times and then holds the stare and says, douchebag. 2 nights later, we were watching football. Yeah, never gonna keep him down. More than anything, this was a year full of love and laughter. And I could go on about his accomplishments, but that's not the way to remember him. Dad didn't appreciate people for their resumes. He appreciated them for who they are. Dad drank coffee, cheap, shitty coffee, burnt and black and often. Dad took Trixie, who is there to keep him company now, for long walks. It's very important when you know he's taking someone for long walks that this is a dog we're talking about. So thank you for the clarification. Dad took Trixie for long walks and cried the hardest of all of us when she died. Dad saw all the bands you wished you did. Twice. When I was in 3rd grade and being bullied at Hebrew school, he'd practiced egging me on in the car rides to karate class to make sure no one could get my goat. In these past few weeks, this was one of the moments I thanked him for. One of the last phrases I heard him say, "You're welcome." Another final phrase when speaking was hard, "I love you too." Another when I told him, "I want to hold your hand." Beatles song. And possibly the last, when we were serving him pureed Indian food and asked if he knew what was for dessert. "Gulab jamun." The last phrase he said the loudest. Once, when I was a high school senior, he walked into my wrestling practice because he couldn't wait an hour to let me know I'd gotten into Brandeis. He did, however, wait a few years to let me know that when he was in high school, he'd also gotten into Brandeis, but $5,000 a year in 1971 seemed too much. Dad sang off-key, but snored on beat. Dad couldn't dress for shit, but loved funny shirts. To be fair, he might have had better shirts if I hadn't taken all of his vintage shirts in middle school. He liked wearing just a big bushy mustache, as his taste in facial hair was from the 70s. For those of you at the viewing, we got him to wear a clean suit today. You're welcome. His favorite drinks were Yingling, Black and Tans, and Jack Daniels. No need for nothing fancy. Dad loved playing with words, making anagrams, rearranging the letters, spelling it backwards. His favorite discovery was that diaper backwards was repaid. This I have been reminded of many times this year. I've been lucky to get to repay him. I am very, very thankful that in this, the final year of our dad, we have had so much time for joy and have been able to start paying him back while he was here. Dad never wanted to be the center of attention, but always wanted to make people laugh. He passed on one of those attributes to me. You can guess. In the senior community, the staff frickin' loved him. They always knew he'd have a joke waiting for them, and while other old curmudgeons might complain, he was genuinely appreciative every time. Even during his last hospitalization, everyone who called me from Cooper kept telling me how much he made them laugh. When he was first hospitalized, and we thought we only had a few years, the thing that broke me down the most, it's why I saved it for the last, that broke me down the most was knowing that Glennis's and my human cats wouldn't get to meet him. We named our future offspring that long time ago. We are weird like Dad. But knowing they wouldn't get to meet him. And then, when we still thought maybe Dad had a few years, Glennis comforted me saying, I'm pretty sure his humor would be the last thing to go. And I can tell you, my wife is smart. When we first got the prognoses, and as they shifted, and we knew he'd never walk the earth with his grandkids, I cried, knowing our human cats would never meet him. Again, Glennis counseled me and comforted me, promising that through my caring, through my humor, they would meet him. On my best days, I hope to be half the marvelous mensch and mashugana he was. Please let me end by sharing one last question from our great sage. What do you call a line of Barbie dolls? A barbecue. Amen. Amen. All right, let's go cry on our spouses.
Okay.
Don't forget your script.
Oh, well, we know where it is.
You know it is. Here. Jason and Rachel, thank you so much. Thank you for creating a hologram of your dad right here. You could see it, hear it. We're going to conclude this part of the funeral itself. Will be followed by a trip to the cemetery for those who would like to come, with El Maleh Rachamim, the memorial prayer. El Maleh Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Hamse Menucha Nuchana, Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, Bamalot Kedoshim Utohorim, Kezohar Harakia Mazhirim, Et Nishmat Ruven Ben Yitzchak V'Shoshana Shehalach La'olamo, Ana Ba'al Harachamim, Hastirehu Beseter Kanfecha Le'olamim, Utzror Bitzror HaChaim Et Nishmato, Adonaihu Nachalato, Ve'anuach B'Shalom Al Mishkavo, V'nomar Amen. May Richard's memory continue to bless us all. So at this time, I'd like to invite everyone just to remain seated while we prepare for our departure today.